America, and welcome to The Tip here at AgendaTruth.com, where the truth is our only agenda. We're going to talk about inflation today. And no, we're not talking about a hot air balloon, but guess what? Kind of works the same way, because the Federal Reserve likes to make balloons that go pop. All right, let's talk about inflation a little bit. What causes it? I can remember there was a time when my middle child, Damon, came to me with working on a school report, and he was writing a story about a French painter. And he came to me and he said, Dad, why is it that this painter's paintings sell for like millions of dollars? He couldn't understand why someone would want to pay that much. I had to explain to him it's because of rarity. The painting that goes for $1 million sells for that much because there's like one of it in the entire world. Just one. But if you notice that if they take that and make a reprint of it and print thousands of copies of it, then how much do the reprints sell for? Maybe a couple hundred. And if they make a bunch more prints of it, then you might later on get the print for what? 20 bucks. So the only one that has any real value is the original. Well, you got to understand the way inflation works. When the Federal Reserve in your government prints more money, the value of your money decreases because there's more of it. We're not on a gold standard. What we have is what's called a fiat currency, meaning that our dollar is just paper money backed up by a promise. There's no commodity, there's no gold, no silver, nothing that is keeping the value of it sound. So what happens is the Federal Reserve and the government can just print all this money and put it into the economy, but what happens is it actually decreases the value of your dollar, and so you can buy less with it. The problem with inflation is if it goes too high, the government and the Federal Reserve can technically rob you. For an example, if you are a senior citizen who is retired and your whole life you worked hard, you were conservative, and you had a savings account and you put money back for your retirement, let me ask you a question. Let's just pretend you put $1 million back in your bank account for retirement. Why'd you put $1 million back? So that you can live a comfortable life. You'll have revenue to go shopping and vacations and to buy things and to pay for your cable bill and things of that nature, correct? Well, if the government hyperinflates your currency, if they just start printing massive amounts of money, guess what happens? There could potentially be a time when your $1 million that you've saved your whole life can only buy a gallon of milk. Now, did you save all that money and make all those sacrifices all those years that you were working just so that when you were 72 years old, you could go to the grocery store and buy a gallon of milk? Is that why you saved that? I think not. So, what are some things that cause inflation besides just printing of money? Sometimes the supply and demand economics can cause inflation. For example, if the people over in the Middle East or wherever decide they want to sell oil for a higher price, then that can make gas prices come up. Well, when you have gas prices that are higher, it costs more money for the trucking companies and things to transport the goods of the groceries and other products to all the various stores across the country. And so therefore, those stores have to pay the trucking companies more money for bringing in the product, which means that they then have to raise the prices of those goods to make up for that additional expense. What else does this? Minimum wage. Yes! I love how the wonderful progressives always are champions for minimum wage. We'll increase the minimum wage and we'll make everyone's life better. If we increase the minimum wage, it'll take people out of poverty. Let me tell you something. Minimum wage helps nobody. It's a wash. All it does is cause greater inflation. Period. It doesn't bring anybody out of poverty. You tell me one person, any of you bankers, anybody in my audience, any of you progressives, anybody in the government, congressman, senator, you tell me one person that you have brought out of poverty by raising the minimum wage. You name me one person and we'll bring them on my show and we will put them on a pedestal because they don't exist. That would be a rarity. That your increase in minimum wage suddenly took them from poverty and put them somewhere else. You want to tell you why that never happened? Here's why. If you own a business and you are paying employees X, okay? And now the government comes in and says, we're going to increase minimum wage. Now you minimally have to pay X plus, okay? So let's just say minimum wage is $5. And let's say I've got an employee working for me at $5 an hour. Maybe they're entry level, they're just starting out. Maybe they're in high school, for example. Well, now the government says, well, now you got to pay them $6 an hour minimum. Well, that means that my expenses have now increased. It now costs me more money to operate my business. Therefore, what do I have to do? I have to increase my prices of my product to make up for that. Therefore, it costs my customers more money to buy my product. Inflation, price increases. However, it doesn't just affect those at the minimum wage level. Let's pretend once again that minimum wage is $5 an hour. And let's pretend that you're a great employee who's been with me for a while. And let's pretend that I'm paying you $10 an hour. Well, now in the scales of economy, you're making $5 an hour more than minimum wage. What if the government decides to increase the minimum wage to $7? Well, you're still above minimum wage, so I can keep you there, right? But in the scales of economy, now you're only making $3 an hour above minimum wage. So technically, if you, my great employee who's been with me for a while, wants to be able to stay in the same standard of living, then I, in essence, have to increase your wage by an additional $2 an hour to $12 an hour so that you can stay in that $5 an hour above minimum wage. Does that make sense? So what happens is this causes price increases all across the nation of different products. Oh, but Chris, if we didn't have minimum wage, the poor people would have nothing and they would be slaves to giant corporations, right? And they would be making nothing. They wouldn't get paid anything. Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question. If there was no minimum wage, none, and you were applying for a job and you went there and you applied and the boss came out and said, I'm going to pay you only 50 cents an hour. Would you accept that job? Would you? No. Do you know a single person that would accept the job at 50 cents an hour? No, you don't. So what happens? If I need an employee to do something and I'm only offering 50 cents an hour and no one's willing to accept to do the job at 50 cents an hour, well then I'm not going to have an employee that I need to do the job to grow my business. Now am I? So what's going to happen? I'm going to have to negotiate with the candidates that are applying. How much do you want to be paid? I want to be paid $20 an hour. Well, I want to pay you $10 an hour. Great, let's meet at 15. Right? We're going to have to meet and negotiate. Why is that such a bad idea? That way we all are paying what we're worth, what we feel we're worth. I am willing to do this job for you, sir, for this amount of money. Well, this is what we can offer you. Okay, I'll accept that, or can you come up just a little? You understand? Minimum wage doesn't help anybody. Now, here's the thing. What have you been seeing? We have been seeing gas prices go through the roof. It's at almost $4 a gallon right now. Wow. That's where it was at the peak of the George Bush crisis. Guess what? Here's the thing. I'm sick and tired of seeing the mainstream media news out there saying that the president has no control over gas prices. That's baloney. Baloney. The president of the United States has more control over gas prices than what they're wanting you to know. Because the president of the United States, guess what he does? He gets to appoint who's going to be the chairman of the Federal Reserve. And if they order the chairman of the Federal Reserve or ask the chairman of the Federal Reserve to help stimulate the economy by doing a stimulus package or TARP or stimulus package number 2 or QE1, QE2, QE3 and print a bunch of money, what does printing a bunch of money do again? Causes inflation. What does that do? Causes prices to rise. Watch this video. You think it's shocking that prices are at $4 a gallon? Here's a video of President Barack Obama before he was elected, who was sitting here saying the reason why people were outraged at $4 a gallon gasoline underneath the Bush administration is because it happened so fast. And his goal would be to get prices to $4 a gallon, but he wants to do it incrementally. So instead of having $4 a gallon from all of a sudden in one summer, President Obama has helped increase the price of gas to $4 a gallon by means of inflation. Watch this video.
I think that we have been slow to move in a better direction when it comes to energy usage. And the president, frankly, hasn't had an energy policy. And as a consequence, we've been consuming energy as if it's infinite. We now know that our demand is badly outstripping supply, with China and India growing as rapidly as they are.
So could these high prices help us?
I think that I would have preferred a gradual adjustment. The fact that this is such a shock to American pocketbooks is not a good thing. But if we take some steps right now to help people make the adjustment, first of all by putting more money into their pockets, but also by encouraging the market to adapt to these new circumstances more quickly, particularly U.S. automakers.
Wow, wasn't that interesting? Have you seen that video from the mainstream media lately? I think not. I know I haven't, and I'm on top of it all day long. Now, food prices going through the roof, driving you nuts, right? Let's take a look at this chart here. Let's look at the price increases of products over the last 10 years. Gasoline has gone up 158%. Beer per 16 ounces, 25%. Eggs per dozen, grade A large, have gone up 73%. Coffee per pound has gone up 90%. Peanut butter, 40%. Milk, 26%. A loaf of bread, 39%. Spaghetti, 44%. Orange juice, 46%. Apples, 43%. Wine has gone up 60%. Electricity rates have gone up 42%. Beef steaks have gone up 41%. Margarine, butter, has gone up 143%. Turkey, 56%. Bacon, 39%. Ground beef, 61% ground beef. How many of you people out there struggling to try to feed your kids hamburger helper? And ground beef has gone up 61%. Chocolate chip cookies have gone up 39%. You're being robbed by your government by means of inflation. And things are going to get worse. This is a warning, America. I'm warning you. If you don't have food storage, please get some. Here, go to foodinsurance.com, check them out. Go to the readystore.com, you can check them out. There's all kinds of places. Make sure you get the best product at the best price, okay? Get as much food storage as you can, because the cost of food is only going to go up, and I'm about to explain to you why. Now, things are about to get really tough, so I want you to prepare now, because a lot of people, if Obama is re-elected president, a lot of people are about to be laid off. Think I'm joking? Let's see. The company that owns Longhorn Steakhouse, Red Lobster, and the Olive Garden has just come out and said that because of Obamacare, that if Obama's reelected and Obamacare is not repealed, that they have 50,000 employees, that a large portion of them are going to have to go to part-time. Because do you remember whenever I talked about the Obamacare and the Supreme Court ruling, I told you what was coming. I told you that if you work at a company that has 50 employees or more, look around, because some of you are about to start getting pink slips, or you're about to be cut to part-time. Because of Obamacare, if you have 50 employees or more, you then have to provide your employees with a health care package, mandatory, or you have to pay a penalty. So what's going to happen? You're going to get cut to part-time so they can avoid all of that. Or you're going to lose your job. If you're a company, I said if you're a company that has 45 employees is looking to expand, you're no longer going to be looking to expand. So while gasoline and food prices and the things you need to survive are going up, the jobs are going to start going down and incomes are going to start going down. Don't believe me? Watch this video. Businesses, okay, with 50 or more employees must offer health insurance to their full-time employees, or they have to pay a penalty. Now, there's all kinds of problems here that I see. If you work somewhere with more than 50 employees, now look, all of you in the cubicles and things like that, stick your head up. Yeah, look over the cubicle and start counting how many people are out there, okay? If you have more than 50 employees, I hope you're prepared. You are about to be cut to part-time. Your hours are going to get cut, okay? If you're working at a business with, let's say 60 employees, be prepared for 11 pink slips. All right. If you're a business with, say, 40 to 49 employees and you were looking to hire some more people to increase production, I bet you are no longer looking to hire people, but are more likely trying to contemplate on how to increase production with your current workforce. All right. Welcome back. So let's talk about bank reserves. I want to go over to this chart really quick and show you what has happened, okay? What we have is typically in an American economy, we typically have a basic minimum amount of inflation. Sometimes inflation isn't entirely horrible as long as it's minimal, 1%, 2%, 3%. If you go to Google the website of the government's inflationary rate, they're going to tell you that inflation is anywhere between 1% to 3%, okay? That's baloney. You want to see why? Because in 1980, they simply changed the way it's calculated, and they said, well, let's take energy prices out, and let's take food prices out, and let's take this out, and this stuff doesn't count. We're only going to count this cheap-made stuff from China, all right? So your real inflationary rate is probably closer between 12 to 16% in reality, all right? So you have this small amount here. What have you seen since 2008? In 2008, when the economic collapse, the housing market crashed, you saw the Dow collapse and go down between 6,000 and 7,000 points, right? And now, what are all the politicians championing? Look at the Dow now. It's 13,000 points, somewhere around there. Woo! Great recovery! No, what has happened is because of TARP and Stimulus 1 and Stimulus 2, they've injected money into the economy. Woo! We're just going to inject some more money in here. And what has happened? The value of your dollar has gone down. That's why you see gas prices going up. That's why you see food prices going up. That's why your daily living products have become more expensive and you are less prosperous. You're feeling more poor now than you were 4, 6, 7, 8 years ago, right? So we're here, mass inflation. What's bad is if we get to hyperinflation. Hyperinflation is bad. Hyperinflation equals riots, economic collapse, reset the currency, reset the system. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to hit my microphone there. I'm bad at it. I forget it's there sometimes. Here's the problem. In the presidential election, I feel like we're stuck. I think we're stuck. Why do I say that? I look over here at this and watch. What has the Fed been doing with QE, quantitative easing? They've done QE1, QE2, and QE3. The Federal Reserve has been monetizing the debt, even though they said they won't monetize the debt. Watch this video.
Can't monetize debt. You mentioned in your statement that you bought securities, mortgage-backed securities, and agency debt, and that's over $1.3 trillion. Well, where did you get the money? You created this money, so you did monetize debt. That went into the banking system.
Will the Federal Reserve monetize this debt?
The Federal Reserve will not monetize the debt.
There was Ben Bernanke saying he would not monetize the debt, but yet he is monetizing the debt through QE, quantitative easing, QE 1, 2, and 3. Now, what has happened with this is where has this money gone? To the banks. But guess what? They're just sitting on it in their reserves. They have trillions of dollars sitting here. It's the only reason why you don't see hyperinflation, because the banks are holding the money in the reserves. Now, Chris, well, how would you know that, sir? Are you just pulling that out of your head somewhere? Yeah, possibly, because you don't want to come inside my head, okay? But here's how I know this. There's charts that say so. It's called the M1 chart and the M2 chart. The M1 chart reflects how much money has the Fed recently created. How much money have they been printing, all right? Historically, the M1 chart and the M2 chart. M2 chart is the velocity of money. What happens? How fast is the money getting into the economy? How fast is it changing hands? Once they print the money, put into the economy, the M2 chart comes up because it gets out there, it's going to businesses, it's transactions, going to payroll, people are spending, and the velocity of the money comes up. what is happening is historically the M1 and the M2 charts have always fluctuated pretty closely together. We print the money, put it into the economy, it gets out there, it's going back and forth, and we stay the same. What has been happening? The Federal Reserve has been printing and creating the money through quantitative easing, okay? So the M1 chart has gone ping right up here. But guess where the M2 chart has been? Pew, down here. You know why it's down here? Because it's just sitting in the bank reserves, waiting, collecting interest, sitting there. Waiting for what? Why are the banks just hanging on to it? Let me tell you why I think it is. I think President Obama and his administration and their whole agenda and the people who are really the puppet masters of him, so to speak, have set up a trigger for Mitt Romney. Obamacare is designed to collapse the system. It's going to force more people to go to be on part-time work or to get laid off or for people not to get hired. What does that do? That makes more people have to become dependent on who? Dependent on the government, right? That's the purpose of Obamacare. Get as many people dependent on the government as possible. And it's a step to get there. Its purpose is not about your health. It's about getting people dependent on the government. That's why it has everything to do with jobs and employers and employees. Nothing to do with being healthy and fixing your broken arm or curing the flu. It's all about getting your employer to fire you or lay you off or cut you to part-time or to make them suffer financially. One or the other. None of those are good for the economy. None of those are good for you. None of those are good for businesses. The only thing Obamacare is good for is the government and making you dependent upon them. Period. So that being said, Obamacare is a trigger to collapse the system. However, what happens if a Republican candidate gets in office? Like Mitt Romney. What's Mitt Romney's plan? I'm going to kill Obamacare. We're going to repeal Obamacare. And I'm going to lower taxes. And I'm going to cut taxes for the middle class. And we're going to stimulate small business growth to revive our economy. That is a problem. That is why the banks are holding all this QE money in reserve. President Obama's administration has set you up, Mitt Romney. They set you up. You're in trouble. You're in trouble here. You're set up. I believe in what you're trying to do. I think. I want to trust you, Mitt Romney. You're a smart guy, and I think you should see this. And if you're not, maybe you'll learn something. But you're smarter than me. I know that. What the trigger here is this. The middle class has been beat up for the last 4 years. The middle class is who creates the small businesses. The middle class is broke. We've had massive inflation, layoffs, no one's hiring, massive unemployment. The list can go on. The middle class is stuck. So Mitt Romney, what's going to have to happen whenever you come into office and you lower those taxes and you want people, the middle class, to step up and small businesses, but they don't have any money? What does the middle class and those people need to do to start a business? What do they need? They need money. They need capital. And because of President Obama in the last 4 years, we don't have any. Right? So what happens? Here we are now. We're all right in here, paying high gas prices, high food prices. So Barack Obama says, if I'm elected, Obamacare will accomplish my goals and make people dependent on the government and collapse the system. But we've created a trigger in case we lose the election. The progressives have created a trigger in case Obama does not win re-election. And it's this. All the printed money sitting in reserves, because when Mitt Romney comes in and lowers taxes and everybody's like, woo-wee! Barack Obama's out of the White House. Let's go back to prosperity. Let's go back to hiring. Let's go back to spending. Good days are here again. And the middle class does what? We need money to start businesses. Who do they come to? Whoop, whoop. Debt. They borrow money from the bank. they shift it, and this money that's in reserves is suddenly loaned out to the middle class to start their small businesses, to restart and re-stimulate the economy, and boom, prices skyrocket. Hyperinflation. Now, what's hyperinflation? Let me show you what hyperinflation does and how it works. This is loaf of bread in the Weimar Republic, okay? Look, 1914, a loaf of bread was 13 cents. 2 years later, 1916, loaf of bread was 19 cents. By 1919, a loaf of bread was 26 cents. 1920, $1.20. Keep that in mind. Remember this chart. What has happened over the last 10 years? Prices have been going up. Gasoline, 158%. Beer, 25%. Graded eggs, 73%. Remember? See this increase here from 1914, 1920? What happened in 1922? All of a sudden, a loaf of bread was $3.50. 6 months later, $700 for a loaf of bread. By the spring of 1923, it was $1,200 for a loaf of bread. By the September of 1923, it was $2 million. Million with an M as in Mary or Mark. $2 million by September of 1923 for a loaf of bread. 1 month later, month of October, $670 million for a loaf of bread. Oh, it gets worse, my friends. 1 month after that, November 1923, it was $3 billion for a loaf of bread. B with a B, B like bumblebee. B, second letter of the alphabet. $3 billion for a loaf of bread. Weeks later, $100 billion for a loaf of bread. You want to tell you what the German people had to do? They used to go to work and they would have their payroll cut to them practically, I think, every 2 to 3 hours. And they would be given permission to leave work to go buy some supplies right then and there. Then they would come back to work a few more hours, get paid again, and then sit back out to buy more supplies because the prices were rising so fast that if you didn't do that, if you went to work that morning, by the time you got paid that night at whatever rate they were paying you then, you wouldn't be able to buy a loaf of bread. Hyperinflation, my friends. Hyperinflation. And the government is stealing from you by printing money. All this QE1, QE2, QE3, TARP, stimulus, all they're doing is creating a catastrophic financial economic collapse. They are stealing your wealth. They are robbing you. They are no different than someone going into a 7-Eleven with a ski mask and a water gun and saying, "Give me the money." Because that's exactly what they're doing to the American people. And they're planning to make you suffer. Either Obamacare is going to collapse the system and make everyone dependent on the government, or they've created a trigger that if Obama is to lose the election and Mitt Romney or someone else is to get in there and they try to cut taxes and stimulate the middle class and create small business, that all of a sudden the borrowing continues, all this money in reserve gets injected into the economy, and all of a sudden we have massive hyperinflation. Now here's a trigger. Here's how you can monitor it. The M2 chart comes out every week. You can Google that, look it up anytime you want. When you see that M2 chart start to increase, get prepared. You need to be preparing right now. Be preparing right now. Food, gold, silver, anything physical is a commodity. Cash, worthless. Let me tell you what's going to happen when they hyperinflate your currency. You're going to be able to wipe your hind end with the dollar bills that you have because they're going to be less valuable than your toilet paper. Okay? Start preparing now. But when you see that M2 chart start to come up, look out, because once it starts, there's no stopping in America. Thank you very much. I hope you heed my warning. I hope you see this. Look it up. Study it. Get prepared. We'll see you next week.